Hello and welcome back to another video. I bet you didn't expect to see me in one of these. I'm currently driving a Glacier Blue Fiat 500 EV. My plan today is to take the car out of its comfort zone of being a city vehicle and take it along some country roads down towards Rye to grab hot chocolate. It's December. The weather's actually on my side, to be fair, today. However, it's still pretty cold, so hot chocolate sounds like a good plan. So with Fiat making this car for more of city use, town use, short trips, I guess, I'm probably the wrong person for their target audience. Let's just say that. Because obviously for work I can do anything between, well, usually between 80 and 400 miles in a day. So with this car having a supposed full range of 199 miles, I'd be looking at least probably 2 charges to get me through a day at work and to get home. So taking that into account, I may come across a bit harsh on my review of this car, because obviously it's probably not something that is in my line of market to buy. So going off of that, on Tuesday I went to visit a friend in London with you, who you've seen on the channel before, and for me to get to London it's about a 70 mile trip there and back, so overall about 140 miles. Taking that into account with Fiat's supposed full range of 199 miles, I thought, oh, that's brilliant, it'll be fine. I can do that in one trip. I won't need to worry about finding a charging point when I get to London, and it shouldn't be too much of a stressful journey. However, as soon as I got on the motorway and I was just cruising at 70 miles an hour with the cruise control on, I could see the mileage really dropping and kind of giving me a reading of what started as 165 or 161 even to, I mean, less than 100. And at that point I was like, oh wow, okay, maybe this isn't going to be as straightforward as a trip as I'd hoped. Bearing in mind I needed to then have it fully charged to get home, because obviously it was another 70 mile trip back. It kind of turned my plans to spending a lot more time on foot. And it wasn't great weather, it was chucking it down with rain. Fortunately we had an umbrella, but we didn't do half as much as potentially I'd like to do. And I think that almost immediately put me off the car, and obviously not living in the city doesn't help, but when you'd expect the car to at least get you to the city with the miles that it's suggesting, even after Fiat saying it does 199, it's a bit confusing when even after a full charge you get 161 and then it still doesn't give you 161. So it's really not great in terms of the mileage capability that this car should have. So I guess the question I'm asking today is, would this car or a similar EV be suitable for someone who didn't live in a city or was doing more than 150 miles a day as a commute? And I think the answer is no, because although interior wise, comfort wise, even noise wise, this car's great to drive, I don't think it would ever appeal to someone unless when they got to work and it was one place of work that they could put their car on charge again. Because if you're doing, say, 170 miles, you're almost guaranteeing that you're going to need to charge it at some point, and if you're not stopping for long enough to get the charge back, to get the car to full charge to get home again, it wouldn't appeal to me. Because even though the fast chargers that are available take between an hour and a half, you've got to find a fast charger, and if you've got one at work, great. I think that way you probably could just get away with owning one and it would be fine. However, if like my work, you're going to people's houses, dealerships, all that kind of stuff, and you're not in one specific place for long enough, and also that doesn't guarantee there will be a charging point, it doesn't work. Because even finding with the London trip, it was get to London, you've got all the EV stations on your nav or on your phone on the apps, and even when you turn up at those stations, you can't guarantee they're going to be available, because obviously they're public use. And with the chargers or charging points in London that I had to use, because the fast charge ones weren't available, they were all kind of using your own lead, which again you get with the car. And that took, I think it was between 4 and 5 hours to go from about 20% charge to, I think that was just to 80%. So in that case, unless you're stopping in London or somewhere that has only slow chargers for longer than 5 hours, let's say, you might never get home. You'd have to do it in certain ways. So you'd have to like go to London, put it on charge straight away, say you're there for 3 hours, it gives you 40, 50%, and then you'd have to plan charging points on your journey back. And that's just a pain. If you think about how easy it is with petrol cars and diesel cars to just find a petrol station, you're there for, 10 minutes most, if you've got a big engine or a big car. And from that, it's like, just surely you'd be in a better place to have a petrol or diesel vehicle when an EV car just doesn't appeal or isn't practical for that purpose. But like I said before, if you're in the city and you have a home charging point, or vice versa, and you're not doing more than 150 miles a day, perfect. I mean, what more could you really ask for? You've got a great entertainment system, the car's smooth, the steering's great, it's nice and straightforward. I think anyone could get in this and feel rather comfortable driving it, rather than it being like a manual and you have to try and get used to that as well as being in the city. And yeah, and it's obviously not too big, so for that purpose it's practical and it's probably ideal. I mean, I haven't obviously driven a Honda E or the other competitors, so it's hard to say exactly which one would be perfect, but from driving it from that point of view, I think London city and town use would be a great car. Alright, so I've made it to Rye. I've got my hot chocolate. Have a quick sip. I guess now is the real test, driving round the very tight roads of Rye to see how this car copes. And whilst doing so, being sat in this traffic, I thought I'd give you a better view of the interior and point out a few things that I like, dislike. And I guess to start with, you can't really miss it, is the just over 10-inch screen, which is great. Obviously it's got a nav, which is actually really good, really accurate. Gives a good reading of your speed, gives you the speed limit for where you are, which is really handy. And yeah, so that for me is great. And I think one thing I would say is when you're spending just under £30,000, which is what this car is, you almost expect to have something like that in any car, I think, in the modern day and age. And obviously with that, you then get your display on the dash itself, so you can have your speed, you can have your trip data, you can have lane assist, which I really have not got on with, and I'll be completely honest, I haven't used at all. I've had it turned off because when avoiding stuff like this, like potholes, it just wants to drag you almost back into the danger bit. And then we have the mileage, you've got your Bluetooth or whatever audio you're listening to, whether it's the radio, etc., on your front of your dash. And then you've got also your navigation, so that's really handy because then you can obviously turn this to your audio or whatever and have it right in front of you. I think in terms of the steering wheel, I think you've got everything you need on there. The thing that baffles me actually is the fact that it lets you look at your messages, because considering you're not able to be on your phone, that's, well, I'd say it's quite a distraction. Should we go up Mermaid Street? Let's go up Mermaid Street. See, now this would be a good test for how the suspension is, because I mean, I don't know if you can see, but this road is completely just built of stone. And to be fair, I'm actually really impressed. I think if I took my car down here, you would feel every single stone there is in the ground. But wow, that's actually very impressive. I think you could obviously bring a Rolls Royce on here, it'd probably still feel very similar. Anyway, we've got a bit sidetracked there. Steering wheel. So also you've got your settings here for... God, that is tight. Your cruise control, which is again very straightforward, as you'd imagine it would be. On the back, I'll have to try and grab a bit of B-roll for that, but you've got a couple of buttons on the back which help you change your song, the volume, and also what source you're listening to your music on, or podcast, whatever it may be. I tell you what, the handling is incredible. I mean, in my car, I think I'd have to do a couple of 2-point turns to get around that, but that was brilliant. One thing I dislike, I'm going to stop for a second because there's no one behind me, are these buttons just here. I don't really understand. Obviously, handbrake is quite a common place to have, the electric handbrake down on your centre console, but with the volume, I mean, you have got it on the back of the steering wheel, but it's quite nice to have it right there rather than having to fiddle around and looking down here whilst you're driving. So there's that, and then you've also got the E mode, which I'll show you what you can have. You can have range, which is basically a one pedal mode where if you take your foot off the accelerator, it brakes for you. And it does the same in Sherpa mode. So with Sherpa mode, it limits you to 50 miles an hour, which is obviously very handy, I guess, for if you're doing a lot of city and town driving, because most of the speed limits are 30 miles an hour. It turns off your air conditioning to obviously use as less battery as possible, and then I'm not sure if your wireless charging and music still works with that, but that's something I'll have to test. But we'll go back into normal mode so I can get used to using my brakes again. Just stop behind this car. So, continuing on with the interior, you can probably just see that through the steering wheel. You've got a start-stop button that's actually very similar to what you get in a Mercedes, which is nice. In terms of the play on the steering wheel, you've got lovely room to kind of move it, I mean, almost any way you'd like it to be, really. I mean, it does only go up and down, but there's plenty of movement there to have a comfortable position. One thing I don't like, or two things I don't like, is firstly this. So, I don't know if you can see it, it's like a plastic back on your mirror, on your rear view mirror, and it's actually really off-putting. When you're on a motorway, for example, it comes to know that you need that bit of space behind your mirror quite a lot. I mean, it's almost like a blind spot in the centre of your windscreen, which is very different. I mean, most cars tend to just have like a suction cup or whatever it may be to just hold that wing mirror on, but I'm not really, I'd love to know what this is for. I don't know if it's something for the auto wipers or the auto lights. And the other negative is this bit here on the kind of centre console dash. It almost, I mean, I'm 6'1", and with there not being a clutch or anything or any reason to have my left leg in movement, you kind of want to just be able to relax it. And I noticed when I was on the motorway journeys, my knee and like just almost the top of my shin keeps hitting against this top bit here, and I mean, that's really not great. I mean, it's really frustrating because you want to be comfortable. I mean, especially if you can put it into your mode where you're staying at one speed. Completely forgotten what it's called, mind blank. You want to be able to just sit back and every now and again just put your brake on, put your indicator on, whatever you may need to do, and not worry about this kind of being a distraction or an irritation. And I think that's what it is.
You've got me saying words in my head, filling my mind with these images, yeah. And it's the way that you look at me, makes me feel like I can't breathe. It ain't right, 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 it ain't right, 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 it ain't right. Oh no, it ain't right, 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 it ain't right, 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 it ain't right. Oh no.
500E. I think I was always going to be quite a harsh critic because obviously I love supercars, I love sports cars, and this kind of goes everything against that. However, I still think I've got quite a good point with the car being £30,000 to buy new, that you still don't quite get your bang for your buck, as they say. I think the main problem being the mileage. I think if the car legitimately had 199 miles, you'd probably be fine and it would work for almost anybody in any market. However, with it only putting me probably 130 at most, and that's me being generous, I just don't think it's worth the money or almost the stress of owning an EV just yet. I can understand why people buy them for the city and town use, or if maybe older people that just do 10 miles to Waitrose and back. However, for me, I wouldn't personally buy one for that money, and I think that's probably why a lot of people aren't buying EVs and they're sticking with petrol and diesel cars, because they're so straightforward. You can literally turn up at a petrol station, take 5 minutes filling up, and you're on your way again. Whereas this, you've got at least an hour and a half either sat in a petrol station, service station, at a charging point, or at home waiting to take your car out again. So for me, I don't think it's very practical, but as I said in the video before, you've got my full review, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I think the next car I have may not be an EV because I don't think anyone want to lend me one, but do stick around and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you soon.